Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, a World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by Tim BitChute, the Liberty Advisor. And don't you feel like the epitome of anti-racism is telling Black people who they can or cannot vote for? No, that is race. Okay, well, we got some interesting footage recently, and a lot of you have probably seen it already, but we're gonna play it. Just listen in. This is ridiculous.
You heard about my ex-boyfriend, right? 50 Cent and his support of Donald Trump.
Yeah, what's going on between you? I saw your tweets and I go, wait, what's happening? Because you said he was your favorite ex-boyfriend, and then what does he do? He's supporting Trump?
He says he doesn't want to pay 62% of taxes, which, by the way, is in a plan of Joe Biden's. That's a lie. So he doesn't want to pay 62% of taxes because he doesn't want to go from being 50 cent to 20 cent. And I had to remind him that he was a Black person, so he can't vote for Donald Trump, and that he shouldn't be influencing an entire swath of people who may listen to him because he's worried about his own personal pocketbook. So I haven't heard back from him yet, but I am willing to, seal the deal in more ways than one if he changes his mind and publicly denounces Donald Trump. I might be willing to go for another spin, if you know what I'm talking about.
So you have Chelsea Handler, who's completely washed up, and according to people like Sam Tripoli, used to send producers pictures of her naked to get roles. She's totally untalented, and she used to have midgets and Black people fighting on her show as slaves of hers. So I don't know if anyone remembers that. That was like
wasn't she also on Epstein's Island too?
I believe there was some connection there, but it was interesting though that she's saying, first of all, that Joe Biden's tax plan isn't 62%. Actually, it is in New York. Second of all, she's saying that 50 Cent isn't allowed to vote for someone that she disagrees with because he's Black. So basically, she's saying that he's a puppet of white people, of their aristocratic bullshit. And then on top of that, she also says, I'd be willing to go for another spin. I'd be willing to sleep with him if he doesn't. I'm like, first of all, bitch, no one wants to sleep with you. So empowering. And I'm pretty sure 50 Cent can get better women than Chelsea Handler. I mean, think of how many people have handled Chelsea Handler. It's just terrible. I also want to play another video real quick of Joe Biden telling Black people that they're not Black. Listen in.
But I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't Black. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
It's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful.
I would have to ask Black voters the question, like, why do the old white men, who have the most racist legislation towards Black people, why are they, the top two front runners when it comes to Black support, Joe Biden and Bloomberg?
So, I mean, it goes without saying that Joe Biden has, he was supporting the crime bill. Now, let me make it clear that the Republicans in those early days when they were pushing the crime bill didn't support it because it wasn't enough for them. But nonetheless, we just only have to go back 2 decades to see how excruciatingly horrible their viewpoints were. And it wasn't even their viewpoints. Remember, these are fair weather Democrats, fair weather Republicans. They switch to whatever side the public wants or whoever in the room is supporting. And this is the way they are. They talk down to big banks on stage and then they go and meet with JP Morgan after. This has always been the case. And they're talking down to people like the Black people in the United States are owned by them. And, it really is condescending. It's insulting. It's offensive to a lot of Black people that I know who don't like being told because they're Black, they have this monopoly. The government or the Democrats have some monopoly on who they can or cannot support or what they can or cannot think. Like they're basically saying that they're still slaves to some degree politically. And that is so wrong on so many levels. And, they say this stuff and they never get called out on it. And they're literally being racist. I say, oh, I don't like the Chinese government's technocracy and I'm called racist. I'm like, so first of all, the number one victim of the Chinese technocracy is the Chinese people. Secondly, the Chinese government doesn't represent a race. And third, again, you have these people that are literally racist, calling everyone else racist. This is Orwellian doublespeak, just like you have fascist people calling people fascists, Nazis calling people Nazis. I mean, Tim, what do you think of this condescending outlook by so many people on the left to talk down to Black people and tell them who they are and what they can or cannot say and do?
Well, I'd really highly recommend people check out, and I just watched this yesterday or listened to it, was the Joe Rogan podcast with Kanye West, and that was actually surprisingly very good. I'm not wasn't like a gigantic Kanye West fan or even Joe Rogan fan, but I'd highly recommend it. But he does talk about how when he went to go run, that all these, liberals basically act like they owned him and said that he couldn't go ahead and do that because they already have the Black vote up on lock. Now, you also, go back to, the 60s and the passage of the Civil Rights Act, Lyndon B. Johnson, who at the time said something along the lines of, and this is his words, not mine, just repeating it, is, these N-words are getting a little bit too uppity and we need to give them something, but not too much. And if we give them enough, then, these N-words will be voting for us for the next 200 years. Now, that's, roughly 99% of that is paraphrased, but that's just about exactly what he said in that.
Well, and Tim, let's keep in mind that he was as well propped up by the media as this great civil rights legend who, helped Black people. He was basically putting a bread line, I shouldn't, no pun intended, a bread line down the street for them to follow, and then into a cage, and then, close the bars shut. And, it's interesting because the Democrats and the Republicans too, but the Democrats to a great deal were the ones that were utilizing the CIA. And we saw this under Reagan as well. So I shouldn't just say the Democrats, the government in general, but both left and right were the ones that were running the CIA, where they're running crack into Black neighborhoods in order to destroy
George
the family
H.W.
unit.
Bush was the basically former acting director of the CIA, which was he at that point sort of was a shadow president underneath Reagan, and Reagan got a little bit too uppity, and so he got a bullet to his head. So
yeah, absolutely. And this is the interesting thing though. They ran crack into Black neighborhoods, and we interviewed Freeway Rick Ross earlier this year, completely shadow banned on YouTube, but it is up on other platforms. But anyway, we interviewed him earlier this year. He was working with the CIA and Nicaraguan government to destroy Black families in order to cause them to become more dependent. And when they were more dependent, they could go on welfare and they could destroy the family unit. And then they end up in this entrapped, situation where now they're being played against each other. And within years, the Rodney King situation happened. April 26, 1992 happened. You had riots in the streets of LA. You had Asians versus Blacks versus whites. And this is what they've been setting up for a long time. They've been trying to clash people against each other by race, misdirecting them from the real enemies, the government. The government is a real enemy, not races, not what color you are. They've been doing this. They've been trying to prop up this issue for years, and they've really, really capitalized on it in the year 2020.
So that wasn't just the Sublime song, the April 26th. But anyways, you go back to, someone like Kamala Harris, was on, was saying, oh yeah, I used to smoke weed and listen to Tupac and Biggie, even though Tupac and Biggie didn't even have their, cassettes or records even out when she was in law school. And, also comes from a Black slave owning family and put, tens of thousands of Black people in jail for smoking marijuana that she, jokes about. Then you've got, Joe Biden and, talking about how his, standoff was with the infamous corn pop and, big. So
while kids were rubbing his leg hair, of course.
Yeah, and that kid's rubbing my hairy legs. Anyways, if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's probably one of the funniest animations that anyone's ever made, but it's to one of Joe Biden's actual speeches. And then you've got, of course, he was, part and parcel calling Black people super predators along with Hillary Clinton as part of the 94 crime bill. But yeah, his son could go and smoke crack and, have like 14-year-old, Chinese, basically sex slaves, pleasuring him. And it's okay because it's liberal. And so,
and keep in mind, Tim, that 3 strike you're out initiative, the 3 strike you're out initiative under Clinton is the same thing that led to our friend Kingsley Edwards' father being placed in jail for over 60 years. He's now been in for 27 years. He might be commuted soon. We hope so. Our fingers are crossed. But Michael Edwards, he has been in jail in Florida since, for 27 years now. And it was under that same BS that has been destroying families and ripping fathers from the homes for decades now. And then they come in after 47 years, Joe Biden, oh, I'm here to help Black communities. He's hurt Black communities more than most KKK members. And that's not even an exaggeration. I mean, he was.
And let's not forget he was giving a eulogy to a former KKK Grand Cyclops, not to be confused with a Grand Dragon. And you actually would go to Snopes and say, oh, that's false because he wasn't the leader of the KKK. He was only a Grand Cyclops, which was only in charge of setting up KKK chapters. So they use those little word games and semantics. But Robert Byrd was a KKK Grand Cyclops who both Hillary and Biden gave eulogies to. Hillary said it was one of his mentors. Let's also not forget it was the Democrats who, underneath FDR, put an actual fucking KKK member on the Supreme Court. I mean, how come no one talks about that? I mean, I can't remember the guy's name, but anyone wants to go fact check me. You know, how about Facebook, YouTube, whoever? I guess we're not on YouTube anymore. Go fact check that. FDR put a KKK member on the Supreme Court, and yet, and he's the big liberal hero who also put Italians, which I am, in concentration camps, and also put Japanese in concentration camps. But he's the big liberal hero that came in and saved the day. This is obviously not an economic talk, because a lot we could do to debunk that as well. But I mean, Joe Biden has been, absolutely part of this. All of this, corruption has been part of, all the most racist laws that have been in existence in modern day U.S. history. The guys, went to school in Syracuse, New York, which is where I'm from. And I know for a fact, going back years that, being in the area, hearing this sort of stuff, that he was, always bragging about graduating at the top of his class, even though he was like 76 out of 83rd.
I think he was like literally the last degrees. I think he was at one point the last.
And then he was almost kicked out 3 times for plagiarizing. And then you go back to like his first run in the 80s, and he got caught plagiarizing this guy's speech like entirely.
Not his first run. Yeah, he got in. He got in, I believe, in 1972. But in the 80s,
first run for president.
Oh, right. Yeah, he got caught countless times. And then when he was asked about it, he was like, I didn't plagiarize. And he said that multiple times. And I remember mainstream media at that time, people that are still in mainstream media that are promoting him now, were saying at the time, this is the end. He's a complete fool. This is the end of Joe Biden. And here we are all these years later. By the way, around that same time, Joe Biden said that in the year 2020, far after I'm gone, we're going to be doing this thing and that. I'm like, far after you're gone, if only.
And the guy had a negative, until he was VP, he had a negative net worth. I mean, he couldn't even do corruption right until he was the vice president, was able to sell his name out and sell the country out for millions of dollars. But the guy had a negative net worth as, someone who had, basically everything paid for him his entire life, and still end up with a negative net worth until he became VP, at which point, he used his son Hunter to go be in compromising positions. That way the Chinese would have blackmail over him to then, be able to, get paid $3 million a year, $10 million. I think they're hiring, Hunter Biden, who's, basically kicked out of the Navy for smoking crack and having all these different prostitutes, and the guy doesn't have one moral compass his entire body that he's worth millions of dollars, when just give me a break. They're paying for political influence. Everyone here watching this knows this, and but here we are, we're the big conspiracy theorists that are causing harm to people according to YouTube. So it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all ridiculous. Anyway, politics is ridiculous. And as I close this off, my friends, remember, good ideas do not require force, and you don't have a right to rule over your neighbor, and you don't have a right to rule over the entire country. Just because the majority of people say something is right doesn't make it right. And we've seen that this year with the majority of people saying that you need to give up your job, you're non-essential, and to go crawl in a hole and basically starve to death on the food stamps of the government. Anyway, I appreciate you
work
going
in a factory.
Yeah, I appreciate you going into this, Tim. Of course, if you want to become a client of Tim BitChute, he is a certified financial planner. You could go to thelibertyadvisor.com. And of course, we're only on BitChute, LBRY/Odysee, as well as Flote.app. We were obviously deleted from YouTube. Go to our Twitter at WorldAltMedia and retweet our pinned tweet talking about how we were deleted to help get us back up and running on YouTube. Not that we're going to be posting solely on YouTube, but just to let our 95% of followers that were subscribed to us on YouTube, out of 155,000 people, that we're not there anymore. We need to give people the heads up to tell them where to go. Of course, we're completely viewer funded, so GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar helps a lot, my friends. We have a Bitcoin address link below, as well as a CoinTree link, which shows you all our different cryptocurrency addresses. We really appreciate that as well. And of course, we have a merchandise store. If you want to join our newsletter, you can go to www.iamband.com. It only takes a second. Just put in your email. And anyway, we really appreciate everyone watching today. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and Tim BitChute signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
Thank you for watching our recent video. Behind me is the Jekyll Island Club, which is where the Federal Reserve was formed. And so in addition to making content and in addition to making, different YouTube videos and library videos, I'm also a financial advisor with a great track record. 2019, we had got almost all the gains of the S&P 500. And then when everything hit the fan in March of 2020, we had almost none of the losses. What I'd really recommend, if you have not seen it, is check out my speech where it was given February 11th down in Acapulco, Mexico, uploaded to YouTube February 19th. And at the end of that video, I did a little GoPro commercial, sort of like I'm doing now, that was ad-libbed, where I told people what the investment strategy was. I told people that what we had did is we were long the S&P 500 while also buying put options on the S&P 500. And what that meant was that was how we were able to get this, because I knew the market was going to either keep going up because of Federal Reserve money printing, or it was going to collapse because reality would actually set in. So, how many advisors actually protected your clients against that? I mean, I would say hardly any of them. So unless you were in a position where, you made almost all the gains last year and didn't really participate in that many of the losses this year, then you don't have a reason to call me. But, if that's not the case, then I would go check out the website, thelibertyadvisor.com, where you can book a time to talk with myself and to get a free consultation to see if we can help put you on a better path. Again, that's thelibertyadvisor.com, and thank you very much, and hope to talk with you and your family soon. Take care.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.